We have an oil modified version, which is water-based. We have our full oil polyurethane as well. We have some floor finishing products that are specialty products and different things as well. And realistically, why we have different formulas is because of all the different jobs. They're all kind of polyurethane based. When you're finished, you're left with the same result. The great thing about it is that if you like using oil-based stain, you can go over top with polyacrylic, you can go over top with oil-modified water-based, you can go over top with fast dry, you can go over top with our white bond poly, antique oil, tongue oil, teak oil, whatever you're using, you can go over top of it. So the thing we've done over the years is, originally we all heard that when you work with water, you got to stay with water. When you work with oil, you got to stay with oil. It's not so much the case with our product because they are base compatible. They'll allow you to do that. For those that never seen inside the can, this is what your water-based polyacrylic will look like. It's kind of a milky color. Your fast dry oil will have that nice amber glow of a nice bourbon or a rye kind of color to it. And then the oil modified version is somewhere in between. Now the oil modified version, this was developed not too many years ago, and the reason we developed that is we were looking for something in a water base that imitates an oil. So it has that same, a little bit of a warm glow of an oil, but the cleanup of a water. So the nice thing about this, it's very low odor. You can use it as a floor finish product, you can use it as a cabinet for any kind of application. You can go over top of a water-based stain, oil-based stain, any multiple things, and it'll still give you that nice warm glow, and it's a very low odor. So even if you were trying to do some floor finishing in the wintertime, doing a small set of stairs, maybe a landing or something, you can use the oil modified version. We do make floor finish grade products that are in a bigger container, and they do have some special additives to make the big jobs that much easier. But if you need to use do a small project, you can use our fast dry or the oil modified for a floor finishing product as well. Now, if you happen to be the one that likes to just keep the wood natural and you don't want to change the color, but you still want to put a base coat on before you put your film polyurethane on, we do also have a saline sealer that works with all our polyurethanes, whether it be oil-based or water-based. So you put this water-based sanding sealer on, put it on, leave it on for an hour, 320 grit sandpaper, knock it down just a little bit, and then you can put your polyurethane over top of it. What that'll do is build that film up right on the surface and get rid of those dry spots that you might see if you don't put anything on there. It helps stabilize it for you. Now, we talked about different finishes and different things, and probably a few of you have seen my legs before. The ones down here have got lots of scars on them.
Prosthetic for those who do say no to the white.
Yes, that's right. This is what our white bond poly will look like even on just a hard to finish surface like this, where you get all these different facets and different things like that. Usually with a white bond poly, it's a very easy product to put on. I usually just take, if it's a shape like this, you can take a little bit of steel wool 4-0, light scuff sand on it, take your white bond poly. Usually what I'll do is pour a little bit into a tuna can or a cat food can, depending whether you like tuna or you like cats. You've got one or the other around the house. So you take a little bit of white bond poly, pour it in here, and then all I do is use a little applicator like this. This is just a bit of cheesecloth inside a nylon. And for those guys that have been saving the nylon to use as a fan belt, if you ever look at it ahead of your car lately, there's no way you're going to figure out how to even wind that thing around all those places that it goes, and it'll stretch so much you'll never be able to get it tight enough to do anything for you. But it'll make a great little applicator for stains, for white bond polys, for any kind of finishes like that. Just put a little bit of cheesecloth. This is just your regular cheesecloth. You can buy this at the hardware stores, the yard goods stores, any of those places. Put a little bit in there. Load up your applicator. Just dip it in there, load it up. You've got enough to work with. When you apply white bond poly to the surface, all you really want to do is wet the surface. You don't have to work it in or anything like that. Just wet the surface, leave it alone, come back in about 3 hours. Nice little scuff again, throw another coat on it, boom. Couple coats, you get a nice little base finish on there. 3 coats, you get a nice, really nice film on there. If it's a hard wearing surface like a tabletop, I might go 4 or 5 coats on it, just because you're getting, in-laws coming over and they have a tendency to be not very respectful for your furniture, if they're like mine. And you have a way to protect that film protect the surface as well. So it's an easy one to put on, and I know that a few guys have come up to me earlier and said that they had tried it since the last time I was out and had some really good success. I have a friend of mine that does bowl turnings, and he uses it constantly on his bowls as well. This one has got 6 coats on it, and what happened is I started off going with satin, and I got 3 coats on there. One day I was doing a demonstration and I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. I grabbed my can of Wipe On Poly in there. Once you get to a certain age, your eyes don't always see everything that you can see. And I grabbed the can and I poured a little bit into the container, and I put the coat on, and as soon as I put it on, saying, "Oh boy, that's really coming up. That sheen's coming up really good." I had the gloss can. As soon as I went 1 coat of gloss, it was gloss from there on in. So got a couple more coats of gloss on since that point, but it's really a very durable film, very tough finish. It'll stand up to perfumes, all kinds of things. So all those little, jewelry boxes, anything like that you're putting on dressers, biggest problem with them is everybody wants to decorate them up with little perfume bottles and stuff like that. And a couple drops of nail polish remover or perfume onto any of the lacquers or shellacs or waxes will have a tendency to mar very quickly. With the Wipe On Poly, it'll stand up to that. Yes?
What's the pros and cons to spraying on the like a polyurethane? Like, is there a benefit to it, or is it just better to?
No, that spray gun is just an applicator. I grew up with a spray gun. Like, my dad was an automotive mechanic, and he taught me from the time I could reach a rocker panel how to start sanding. That's how I got to sand all the stone chips off of cars that had like 5 coats of paint on them, right? So when you imagine when you're feathering out a stone chip, you end up with a ring of colors about this big around by the time you're finished. But if you're using a spray gun and you're used to using a spray gun, and the biggest thing you got to do is play around with it, a little bit of practice with it, the same as you do with a brush. You got to understand exactly how you're doing. Not try to rush your finish too much. Like, if you overload it, you will get sags and runs in it like that. But it's just a matter of, most of our products, like our polyurethane, our polyacrylic, our oil modified version, we've done them in aerosol version at one time or another. So they are able to spray them. It's just a matter of, getting your technique down. And I've used HVLP on a lot of them, and they work great. I find that my biggest thing is I'm not, because I started off being very young, my job was to clean up the spray gun at the end of the night all the time. It was never a fun process, so it was always one of those things, if I can avoid cleaning out a gun, unless it's a big project where I'm doing a lot of it, I'll just use a brush.
How do you find out what finishes on your furniture if you want to touch up?
If you want to touch it up, if you're thinking, if the piece is old, usually any piece that you're going to work on, what you always want to do is do a little bit of cleanup on it first before you start to work on the finish, because you want to make sure you actually are looking at the finish. Usually where there's a little apron or underneath the edge of a table, someplace you can play around a little bit. Always, I find that the best thing to do is a little bit of paint thinner first. And that's going to cut through any waxes, silicones, any residue from cleaners. Take that off. If you think it's
it could be lacquer.
It could be a lacquer. Easy way to tell, you got a bit of nail polish remover or a bit of acetone, cotton ball. Take that cotton ball, moisten it with a bit of acetone, hold it on the surface for a long count of 10. When you pull it off, if it's sticky, that means it's a lacquer, and you're going to need to use like an antique refinisher to remove that off. Now, don't do this in the center of the dining room table unless you're committed to doing it, because that's what's going to happen. If it doesn't touch it, that means it's usually a polyurethane, because there's usually the two types of films, like the lacquer, shellacs, and varnishes are the softer films, and they will be dissolved by any perfumes, colognes, and alcohols, basically.
This is a chair with night cabinet, and my breathing machine leaked one time.
Okay,
Affected the finish.
and it's affected. It's got a little bit of water damage, or is it?
No,
Yeah.
it's right on the surface.
It's right on the surface. Yeah, try wiping it down with a bit of paint thinner first, clean it on. Sometimes it could be just if there was a bit of a wax film on there, it could have been marred by the moisture. A lot of times if it's got any kind of paste wax on it, it will protect what's underneath it, and it'll just mar the film. I'm sure a lot of you guys have used paste wax over the years. And usually when we see the paste waxes, we usually see it in underneath. Grandma's cupboard in the kitchen, underneath the sink. The lid is nowhere to be found. There's a sock, a wool sock like this hanging out of the top of it, or a felt pad, right? There's usually one of those things. Well, the best way to put paste wax on is actually using a bit of cheesecloth or an old t-shirt. If you got some old t-shirts you want to sacrifice, you can use that. Take a little bit of cheesecloth, take a teaspoon, don't use the one you're using for your coffee cup in the morning. Take a little bit of paste wax out of it, put it in the cloth, wind your cloth around it, and what you want to actually do is apply it through the cloth. And just the friction of the wood and the cloth will allow you to put that thin coat of paste wax on there. Put a thin coat of paste wax on there, give it about 15 minutes. Old jeans that you're not supposed to wear out in public anymore, cut them up into rags, give them a little buff, put on another coat of paste wax, and sometimes that'll just give you a freshen up your finish. A lot of times you don't necessarily want to take off old finishes unless they're really in bad shape. You just want to kind of redress them and protect them. And even today, like a lot of pieces of furniture you buy something out of the store, you take it home, you have it there very short period of time, and all of a sudden you see fine scratches happening on it very quickly. That's because lacquers aren't that durable. They have a tendency to be nice because you can spray it on, put another coat on 5 minutes later, put another coat on 5 minutes later, put it in a box 15 minutes later, and away you go, right? But the problem is the film does not stand up to abrasion very well, so you get a couple of particles of dust on the surface, a magazine slides across it, all of a sudden you get a scratch on there. A little bit of paste wax on top of those pieces of furniture will give you an extra protective coating on there as well. So you can actually buff it up and give it that much more protection and protect those softer films underneath, right? Yes?
I got one of those tables. How do you get rid of the scratches though?
If it's got fine scratches in it now,
Fine scratches, yeah.
is it a dark finish on it?
Yes.
Yeah, we do make a dark paste wax. It's the same can, comes in the same color can as this, but it has a solid red circle.
Yeah, I got some of that.
Yeah, if you use that, it usually will fill in those fine scratches for you. That dark paste wax.
Right.
Put your paste wax on, the same method I did. Let it dry. Give it that 15, and we're probably, all of us pretty much remember turtle wax from the days gone by, most of us, except for the young lady there. I didn't want to count you in that, but I knew you were there. But we all remember putting turtle wax on the car, right? You put it on, where it got weight and hazy, it was easy to buff off, where it was wet around the chrome, where the real chrome was. It was really hard to get it to buff. That's exactly the same with paste wax. Put on those thin coats, let it dry, buff it, put on another thin coat, build your coats up that way. And a couple of coats should take care of those fine scratches for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Once you get a film?
Will you get a film?
Yeah.
You will get a film. Like when you put paste wax on wood like so, you definitely will get a protective film on the surface. It'll be just like.
No, but what I meant was after time, once you start waxing it, won't you have to wax it regularly?
Not necessarily. It's only if you're getting a lot of wear.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually I have a harvest table at home, and it's got basically it's a softwood pine table. It was actually reclaimed lumber, reclaimed wood out of red pine, out of a ditch when I got it, and I made a harvest table out of it, and it's got conditioner on it, got oil-based stain on it, and then it's got antique oil on it, and then I've got paste wax on top of it. And I usually, my wife and I have bed and breakfast, so we use the table all the time. The only time I really need to put another film on it is usually when my in-laws are coming. I'll put another coat on it just to protect it a little bit. But it's a very low maintenance, and the only way people see a lot of wax buildup is if they grab a handful of wax out of there and start smearing it on. But if you apply it through the cloth, you'll get a nice thin coat on there, and it will give you, the natural dries clear, so you really don't see it on there. The dark will give you a little bit of a fill and add a little bit of color to some of the paler woods, but you usually use it for an antiquing purposes or for to fix those fine scratches on the dark finishes. Yes?
So if you want to do your covers, the sealed oak covers, try the cleaner first.
Yeah.
And do it on the inside, whatever, to make sure.
Yep.
And you could go to the paste wax then.
I wouldn't go with paste wax in the kitchen. Only because of the steam that you're going to get, you're going to see cloudiness coming on the wax a little bit more.
And is it possible for the wax to add to discoloring over time or yellowing?
Not really. It's the wood underneath that's going to pick up the color more than anything.
So you'd stay with the poly rub on it then?
Yeah, the white pump poly. It's going to give you a more maintainable film that you can just take a spray cleaner and wipe it down every once in a while. It's like spring cleaning. You just do that. It's springtime, so I'm staying out of my house for a while. Yes.
When you're preparing to do it, so you never shake the can, right?
When you
shake it up,
with the oils,
yeah.
It will bother it. The only thing is that if you're the guy that likes to go in the store, grab a can of product, and shake it like this all the way home, then you could have a problem. But this is a brush-on product. You shouldn't really. We do have levelers in the product. We do put additives in there to make it flow out better. So if you stop by the time you get to the car, by the drive home, it'll be good to go. It's not an issue.
Create air bubbles. Or...
Don't eat, you should. It's like a martini. You should be stirred, not shaken. Right? Yes.
Yeah, I use your polyurethane product for a new table.
Yep.
And I use the foam brush applicator. And when it's on the horizontal surfaces with the levelers, it works great. And I get great finish. But when I'm going around the edges, because of the levelers, I'm finding they drip a lot. And because I was listening to you last year saying that you don't want to go over again or you're going to reintroduce bubbles.
Yep.
So how do I deal with that without taking the drip away and make it all bubbly? Like I tried it a couple times to take the drip away, but then all of a sudden the bubbles appear.
Yeah, it's a little difficult working the edge of a table with the top. And usually what I'll do is, if this is my tabletop that I'm working on, and this is the farthest edge away, I'll start on the front edge, right? And I'll basically, whenever you put in a film on, and this is, and I usually demonstrate how to put a film on. I'll just kind of talk through it a little bit here today. When you go to use your applicator, when you're working off of a rounded edge like this, you'll find that a filament brush is much better than a foam brush. The problem with foam is that when you try to put it to the surface, it has to force itself against there, where a filament will mold to it and work around the edge a little bit more for you, so you don't get the rub wear on there. So when you're doing your edge, what you want to do is unload here and then go back to the very end and bring it from there. Never take a full load right to the end. Always unload and then bring it in.
Yep.
Then go from the dry into the wet,
Yep.
all the way across. Okay, now when I'm doing this, if this was my front edge and I'm working my way back to the table, I'm going to start on the top and do the same thing. I'm unloading, bring it from there, working back into the wet, all the way across, dip it back in. Usually at this point, I just tip up my outside edges. Not very much on the brush at all at that point. I just keep working the edge back as I'm working across the top, bringing it to me, right?
So you can go over the same spot again.
Yeah, you basically just kind of work it up to the edge, because you're really, if you don't work it too much, it's still open and it allows you to clean up any excess that you happen to put on there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about the spray gun, because then I wouldn't have that issue. But so it is possible to do it with your brush.
Yeah.